Hello everyone, my name is Dan and I will be your design journey art class expert for drawing in perspective. In this session we are going to be creating some realistic looking textures using pencil so that you can render your drawings in detail. To follow along with this session, you will need a pack of pencils. I will continue using these ones. You want a pack that has a selection of various grades. I will be explaining pencil grades shortly in this session. Along with this, you might need a sharpener, an eraser. You'll also want a ruler and some paper to draw on. Now before we start drawing, I want to explain pencil grades because they are important to understand if you are going to be producing some realistic textures using pencils. Now here I have a pack of 6 drawing pencils ranging from 2H to 6B. Now you'll often find that a pencil grade begins with a number followed by a letter, and these letters are either B or H. B stands for black and H stands for hard. You'll also find the letter F sometimes as well, which stands for fine. Pencils that have a B are generally softer, meaning you can produce some darker shades, and pencils that have a H are harder, meaning you can produce some lighter shades. Now the number is there to act as a scale, indicating how hard or soft that pencil is. So a 6B is softer than a 2B, and a 6H is harder than a 2H. You can get sets of pencils that include a complete range of different pencil grades, but you will rarely use all of them. I find that you can produce a drawing using only a few pencils. There's no need to be using 20 different pencils and swapping them all of the time. You'll find that throughout these sessions when I create these drawings, I use around 3 pencils. I generally use the HB to outline the drawing, then the 2B to start rendering it, and then I finally swap over to the 6B towards the end to darken and correct the drawing. So a set like this, which just gives you the pencils you need, is more ideal, but again, that's your decision to make. Now, on the front of sets of pencils, you'll often see what is referred to as a value scale, and these are the pencil grades, and alongside that, you usually have an example of the shade that certain pencil can produce. So now in this session I am going to produce my own value scale using these pencils that I have here. I encourage you to also have a go at creating one of these using the pencils that you have, because it will really help you gain an understanding for the pencils that you are using, and you'll also be able to make a more informed decision when it comes to choosing what pencil to use when drawing. So I will start by drawing out a box and dividing this up into 6 sections, seeing as we have 6 pencils here. I will also draw out another box below, and I'll outline this again so that you can see it clearly. Now I'm going to work my way through the pencils that I have here from light to dark, starting with the lightest pencil I have, which is the 2H pencil, and I will start to shade in the first section. Here there is only one hard pencil included in this pack, a 2H, and that's enough, that's all you need. If I ever need to create a lighter shade, I can just apply less pressure with the pencil. So now I switch to the HB pencil, which you might have guessed already stands for hard black, and this is like an in-between pencil. You'll often find that most of the general pencils you find laying around are HB. It seems to be the standard for drawing and writing, except when you have more pencils at your disposal like this, you might not use it so much. In these sessions I have outlined my drawings using this so that my lines were a little bolder, allowing you to hopefully see them more clearly. But normally I would use a harder pencil to create outlines, as it keeps them lines nice and sharp. The next pencil here is B, standing for black. Think of this as a 1B, they just don't put a number in front of this one. Now next we have 2B. This is my go-to pencil when rendering a drawing. It's probably the best all-around pencil for creating light and dark shades. It's not too soft or too hard, that's why I render the entire drawing first using this, and as I do so I am able to change the amount of pressure I apply to achieve different results. This here is a 4B pencil, slightly softer than a 2B pencil, meaning you should be able to produce some darker shades. You can see as I create this value scale here, the difference between each of these pencils and the value that they each can produce. Finally, here is a 6B pencil, the darkest pencil in this set, which I have been using to work over the drawings at the end, and if you apply a good amount of pressure when using this pencil, you'll be able to achieve a very dark shade. So this is a good one to use when you are creating those darker values in a drawing and adding some contrast to the overall image. So by looking at this value scale, you can see the difference between these grades of pencils, giving you an idea of when and which pencil you should use when drawing. Now below I am going to create another value scale using the same pencils, except this one will be more of a gradient, and these shades of pencils will be blended together, shifting from light to dark. This is something I recommend you do as well. Using each of your pencils that you have, you'll really be able to get a feel for how each pencil varies, and it's good to know when drawing. You want to try and create a consistent shift in value as you progress from light to dark. This here is the value scale I am working with when using these pencils, and as you can see, I am able to produce both light to dark shades. So now you should have a better understanding of pencil grades, which will help you out a lot when drawing, because like I said earlier, you can now make an informed decision when it comes to selecting what pencil to use when drawing. Now it's time to put all of these pencils to use and apply what we have just learned, because I'm going to show you how to create some realistic textures using pencil. I'll show you how to create a texture for some leaves, for some tree bark, for an old stone wall, and finally some grass. So I'm going to start right away by drawing out 4 boxes for each of these textures, and I'll outline each of these so that you can see them clearly. Now I'm going to start with a texture for some leaves, and to do this I use the HB pencil and start to outline the shape of many small leaves here. Each of these leaves are similar in shape to a teardrop, except I suppose it would be upside down, but here I take my time to outline each of them, and not all of them have to be perfect. In fact, it's better to have some that are more messy and random. After all, we are drawing a series of leaves here, not all of them will look the same. Once you have outlined each of these, swap your HB pencil to a 2B pencil and start to do the same. Outline each of these leaves, making them darker, but every so often you want to shade in the small separating space in between them. Now this all takes a long time to do, but it's important to be patient when drawing. It can be a tedious process at times, but the results are worthwhile. Once you have worked over this using the 2B pencil, you can switch over to a softer pencil. Here I have selected the 4B pencil, and I can start to work into this further. This time I am shading in these leaves whilst darkening the spaces around them. In some areas I also shade in some darker sections. So I continue to draw out this texture and develop it further using this 4B pencil, and I am able to produce some darker shades using this, which is ideal for what I am doing here. Finally, once you have finished doing that, you should have a texture that represents leaves. So now I will show you how to produce a texture that is suitable for the bark of a tree, and you can also use this to show a rough wooden texture in your drawing. I'll start by taking the HB pencil, and here I start to create a series of vertical lines at different lengths next to each other. I make some of these bolder as I do this, and I also leave some separating space in between each of them. Whilst most of them are directly vertical, I do suggest making some of them curve slightly, because again, these natural textures don't have to be perfect. You are able to be a bit loose with your lines. So now I have all of this drawn out, I am going to swap this HB pencil for a 2B pencil and start to work into all of this. Here I use the previous lines I created as more of a guide as I start to create smaller and darker lines around them. In some areas I also create much bolder lines at a larger scale, and the smaller lines fit in between them. Now in some areas I also add some horizontal lines, and these become very obvious due to the existing lines being mostly vertical. You want to make sure you keep your pencil sharp as you do this because you want to also create finer lines in places. Whilst I am drawing out these lines, I create additional marks around them, and I also work over it with some shade. As I do this, I alter the pressure I apply with the pencil, which allows me to produce both dark and light shades. Finally, once I have worked into all of it like this using the 2B pencil, I take the 6B pencil and begin to darken areas of this texture. At this stage, I am working over everything I have previously done, refining some of the lines and adding some darker shades around them. It takes some time to complete, but eventually you should have a texture similar to this. So now we are 2 of these textures down and we have 2 more to go. Now I'm going to show you how to create an old stone wall texture. To begin this one, I start by outlining a series of stones which will be organised around each other. This stone wall isn't going to be one of those nicely laid out and consistent brick walls. Instead, I'm trying to go for something that is more similar to the old walls you might see around a cottage or an old village, where different sized stones are stacked and ordered on top of each other. So here I outline these individual stones that are at various sizes, and once I have done that, I will take the 2B pencil and begin to render this. So here I work over each of these stones, creating a more defined outline for them, and I also shade them in like so. I apply a little more pressure in some areas, more so in the separating space in between the stones. Also, as I shade in these stones, I add some small marks on them, moving the pencil in various directions in an effort to make each stone look different. Now you'll learn more from watching me produce these textures here, as a lot of what I do here tends to be self-explanatory. I work my way through each of these outlines, shading in the stones and also the spaces in between them. Now I will take a softer pencil. Here I use the 4B to go over what I just did again, and I darken some areas. Here I make the separating space between the stones very dark, whilst also shading in sections of these stones as well. Once I am finished doing that, I finally have a texture produced that resembles an old stone wall. Okay, so I hope you are following along with me here, and if you have made it this far then congratulations, because we have one more texture to go, and this is going to be a texture for some grass. The first step is to take the HB pencil and start to create a shade that involves moving the pencil in small circular motions, as you can see here. This is similar to how I have been drawing in the foliage in many of the example drawings I have produced so far. I try to apply consistent pressure as I do this, and I want to just lay down this first layer, which is a lighter shade, before developing it further. So now I take the 2B pencil. Make sure this is very sharp when you do this, as well as you want these lines to be more precise and fine, and here I am working over what I have done previously, creating some darker circular marks and lines that are rather messy and unorganised. I continue to do this, but I make sure that the lighter texture underneath still remains visible in some places, and this grass texture doesn't need to be any darker, so there's no need to switch over to a softer pencil. Unless you want to do so, then that's fine, but just keep working into this, creating marks like I do here, until you have something you are happy with. So here are the final 4 textures that we have produced in this session. So there we go, this has been a session all about pencils and what you need to know to use them. If you have created any of your own drawings, then be sure to share them over on Instagram using the hashtag MyDesignJourney, and tag me as well at DanBeardshaw so I can see what you create. Again, if you want to start drawing right now, then I do recommend creating one of your own value scales using the pencils that you have so that you can get more familiar with them. With that being said, thank you for watching and joining me in this session.